I stood frozen in my childhood bedroom doorway, staring at what remained of my wedding dress. The ivory silk gown I had saved 3 years to buy hung in 2 perfect halves from my closet rod, cut clean down the middle with surgical precision. Scattered pearl beads rolled across the hardwood floor like tiny tears. My father, Robert, stood beside my dresser, silver scissors still gleaming in his weathered hands, while my mother, Carol, crossed her arms with the satisfaction of someone who had just completed an unpleasant but necessary task. "You deserve this, Tammy," he said, his voice carrying the same cold disappointment I had heard my entire life. "Maybe now you will finally understand what real disappointment feels like." I touched the destroyed fabric, feeling the weight of their cruelty settle around my shoulders like a familiar burden. But instead of the tears they expected, a calm smile spread across my face. Tomorrow, they would discover exactly who deserved what. 6 hours earlier, I had walked into our family dining room expecting a quiet dinner before my wedding day. The mahogany table that had hosted countless holiday meals bore the same floral china pattern my mother had used since my childhood, but the atmosphere felt heavy with unspoken tension. Robert sat at the head of the table, his gray hair perfectly combed and his jaw set in the stubborn expression I knew too well. Carol bustled around the kitchen island, her movements sharp and deliberate as she arranged serving dishes with military precision. "So," my father began, cutting into his pot roast without looking up, "tomorrow you are really going through with this ridiculous charade." My brother Jake snorted from across the table, his mouth full of mashed potatoes. At 28, he still lived in our parents' basement and worked part-time at the local electronics store, but somehow he had earned their approval while I remained their constant disappointment. "Nathan is a good man," I replied quietly, setting down my fork. "He makes me happy. A mechanic." Carol said the word like it tasted bitter. 32 years old, and you are throwing your life away on a man who works with his hands for minimum wage. There is nothing wrong with honest work. Honest work, Robert laughed harshly. Do you know what Bradley Henderson is doing now? Running his father's investment firm. Making more money in a month than your precious Nathan will see in 5 years. Bradley Henderson, the golden boy from down the street who had asked me to senior prom and assumed that gave him ownership rights to my future. My parents had been pushing us together since we were teenagers, blind to the fact that Bradley treated women like accessories and expected me to abandon every dream I had ever harbored. Bradley is engaged to someone else, I reminded them. He broke up with that girl last month, Carol said triumphantly. His mother called me yesterday. He specifically asked if you were still available. Jake leaned back in his chair, grinning. Maybe he could object at the wedding tomorrow. That would be hilarious. My phone buzzed with a text from Nathan. I started to reach for it, but Robert's hand shot across the table and grabbed my wrist. No phones at dinner. You know the rules. The phone continued buzzing. Nathan was probably wondering about the final details for tomorrow, or perhaps sharing his excitement about our honeymoon plans. We had saved for 2 years to afford a week in the mountains. Nothing fancy, but it would be ours. Actually, Carol said slowly, Bradley might not need to wait until the ceremony. She walked into the kitchen and returned with my phone, which had stopped buzzing. I watched in horror as she scrolled through my notifications. Nathan Williams. She read aloud. How convenient. He is calling right now. Before I could protest, she answered the call and put it on speaker. Hello. Nathan's warm voice filled the room. Tammy? Is everything okay? You sound different. This is Carol Richardson, Tammy's mother, my mother said sweetly. I'm afraid I have some unfortunate news about tomorrow. My heart stopped. The wedding is canceled, she continued. Tammy has realized she is making a terrible mistake. She will not be marrying you after all. What? Nathan's voice cracked with confusion. Carol, is Tammy there? Can I talk to her? She does not want to speak with you right now. She is very upset and needs space to think clearly. I lunged for the phone, but Jake grabbed my arm while Robert stood up to block my path. I think it would be best if you did not contact her again, Carol said. She will reach out when she is ready. She hung up before Nathan could respond. You cannot do this, I whispered, my voice shaking with rage. You have no right. We have every right, Robert thundered. You are our daughter, and we refuse to stand by and watch you destroy your life. Do you have any idea what people will think when they see you married to some nobody? The Richardson name means something in this town. The Richardson name means you own a failing hardware store and spend your evenings complaining about everyone who has done better than you. The slap came so fast I did not see it coming. My cheek burned where Robert's palm had connected, and the silence that followed felt dangerous. 18 years we have invested in you, he said quietly. 18 years of food, clothing, education, and this is how you repay us. By throwing yourself away on the first loser who pays attention to you. I am 32 years old. I can marry whoever I choose. Can you? Carol asked. Because from where I sit, you have made nothing but poor choices your entire adult life. You dropped out of college after one semester. You work some dead-end job we know nothing about. You live in a tiny apartment across town and never visit unless we call you first. What exactly have you accomplished that gives you the right to lecture us about good decisions? The irony cut deep because they truly believed every word. They had no idea what my life actually looked like because they had never bothered to ask real questions or listen to real answers. And the wedding invitations. Carol continued, I never sent them to your cousins or your grandmother. I was too embarrassed to let the extended family know what kind of man you were planning to marry. Jake laughed. Grandma would have a heart attack if she knew Tammy was marrying a grease monkey. You had no right to do that, I said. We had every right, Robert replied. We are trying to save you from yourself, and if you cannot see that, then maybe you need a stronger wake-up call. He gestured toward the kitchen counter, where I suddenly noticed a stack of mail I had been expecting for months, letters and packages that should have been forwarded to my apartment. We have been intercepting your mail, Carol said matter-of-factly. The amount of junk you receive is ridiculous. Fake job offers, pretend awards, people trying to scam you with official-looking documents. We threw it all away to protect you. My blood went cold. You threw away my mail. Obviously fake things, she said. Letters claiming to be from the Pentagon, packages with toy military items. Did you really think we would fall for those scams? Someone has clearly been targeting you because they think you are gullible. I stared at them in shock, finally understanding why months of critical communications had gone unanswered. Why my superiors had stopped trying to reach me through traditional channels, why I had been forced to rely entirely on secure military lines and official couriers. We are trying to protect you, Robert said, even if you are too stubborn to appreciate it. I stood up slowly, my mind racing through the implications of what they had just revealed. How many classified updates had they discarded? How many ceremony invitations? How many commendations and orders? I need to make a phone call, I said quietly. No more phone calls tonight, Carol said firmly. You have caused enough drama for one evening. This is not about Nathan. This is something else entirely. Whatever it is can wait until morning. Tonight you are going to sit in your room and think seriously about the choices you are making. I looked at each of them in turn. My father, red-faced and self-righteous. My mother, convinced she was saving me from myself. My brother, enjoying the entertainment of my humiliation. Fine, I said. I will be in my room. I turned and walked upstairs, my heart pounding as I pulled out my secure phone and dialed a number I had memorized years ago. Commander Williams. Came the crisp response on the second ring. This is Admiral Richardson, I said quietly. I need to arrange special transport for tomorrow morning. There has been a change of plans. The conversation with Commander Williams lasted exactly 11 minutes and covered contingencies I had hoped never to use. When I returned downstairs, my parents had moved into the living room, where they were systematically going through boxes of my belongings I had stored in their garage. What are you doing? I asked. Carol held up my dress uniform jacket, the gold braid gleaming under the lamplight. Cleaning out your junk. This costume is actually well made for a fake. She tossed it carelessly onto a growing pile that included my cover, my ceremonial sword, and a wooden box containing medals I had earned in theaters of operation my parents could not pronounce. These are not costumes, I said carefully. Robert emerged from behind the couch holding my ribbons display case. Military wannabe nonsense. I cannot believe you spent money on this garbage. He opened the case and dumped the contents onto the coffee table. Look at all these fake medals. Purple Heart, Silver Star, Bronze Star with V device. Do you really think anyone would believe you earned these? Jake picked up my Navy Cross and examined it like a curious artifact. The craftsmanship is pretty good, though. Where did you buy these? I did not buy them. Right, Carol said sarcastically. You earned them. In your imaginary military career. She opened the wooden box and pulled out my Medal of Honor citation, scanning it with the amused expression of someone reading obvious fiction. For conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of life above and beyond the call of duty. She read aloud in a mocking voice. While serving as commanding officer during typhoon rescue operations in the Pacific Fleet, Rear Admiral Tammy Richardson personally led 17 helicopter missions into Category 5 storm conditions, resulting in the evacuation of 437 civilians from compromised vessels. She looked up at me and laughed. Rear Admiral? Really, Tammy? If you are going to make up stories, at least make them believable. You think I made that up. Obviously. The real question is why. Are you trying to impress your mechanic boyfriend? Does he know about your little dress-up fantasies? Robert stood up and stretched, surveying the scattered military items with disgust. This is what happens when people do not have real accomplishments to be proud of. They create elaborate fantasy lives to feel important. Tomorrow is my wedding day, I said. Can we please put everything back? Tomorrow is not your wedding day, Carol said firmly. Tomorrow you are going to call Bradley Henderson and apologize for wasting his time. Then you are going to thank us for saving you from the biggest mistake of your life. She walked over to my dress uniform and began checking the pockets. When she found my service identification card, she held it up triumphantly. Look at this. A fake military ID with your picture on it. Do you realize impersonating an officer is a federal crime? You could go to prison for this. That is not fake. Of course it is fake. You have never served a day in the military. You dropped out of college and disappeared for years doing who knows what. Now you show up with boxes of costume jewelry and fake documents, trying to convince everyone you are some kind of war hero. Jake had moved on to examining my dress sword, pulling it partially from its scabbard to admire the engraving. The detail work is incredible. Look, it even has your name engraved on the blade. Put that down, I said sharply. Why? Afraid I will damage your toy. Before I could stop him, he had drawn the sword completely and was making swooshing sounds as he swung it through the air. The blade caught the light, revealing the intricate engravings that marked significant battles and commendations. Jake, be careful with that. It is just a replica, Robert said dismissively. Although I have to admit, whoever made these fakes did excellent work. They look completely authentic. Carol had moved on to my awards citations, reading them with increasing amusement. Listen to this one. For extraordinary heroism during combat operations in the Arabian Sea, Lieutenant Commander Richardson distinguished herself by leading a boarding party onto a hostile vessel, resulting in the capture of 15 armed pirates and the rescue of 23 merchant mariners. Pirates, Tammy? Really? Why is that funny? Because you get seasick on the ferry to Kelly's Island. The idea of you commanding a naval vessel is absurd. They continued their mockery while I stood helplessly watching them paw through items that represented years of service, sacrifice, and achievement. Every ribbon told a story of missions they would never understand, of decisions made under pressure they could not imagine, of responsibilities that would crush their small-minded worldview. My secure phone buzzed with a text message. I glanced at it quickly. Transport confirmed 0600. Chapel arrangements complete. Will need dress uniforms for ceremony. Security detail assigned. I typed back quickly. Understood. Thank you, Commander. When I looked up, Robert was watching me suspiciously. Who were you texting? A friend about tomorrow. I thought we canceled your wedding. You canceled the ceremony at St. Patrick's. You did not cancel my wedding. Carol looked confused. What is that supposed to mean? It means I am still getting married tomorrow. Just not where you expected. To the mechanic, to Lieutenant Commander Nathan Hayes, United States Navy. The room fell silent. Jake stopped swinging my sword. Carol stopped reading my citations. Robert stared at me with the expression of someone trying to solve an impossible puzzle. What did you just say? My father asked slowly. Nathan is not a mechanic. He is a helicopter pilot with the Pacific Fleet. We met during joint rescue operations 18 months ago. That is impossible, Carol said. We met him. He works at Johnson's Auto Repair. No, You met someone I asked to pretend to be Nathan because I knew exactly how you would react if you learned the truth. The truth about what? I pulled out my secure phone and showed them the screensaver, a photo of me in dress whites shaking hands with the Secretary of the Navy during my promotion ceremony. The truth about who I really am. Robert grabbed the phone and studied the image. This is photoshopped. No, it is not. You are trying to tell us you are actually in the military. I am trying to tell you I am a Rear Admiral in the United States Navy. Jake dropped my sword onto the carpet with a metallic clang. That is impossible. Why is it impossible? Because, Carol sputtered, because you dropped out of college, because you never told us you joined the military. Because we would have known. You would have known if you had ever asked me what I did for a living instead of assuming I was a failure. You would have known if you had not thrown away every piece of official correspondence I received. You would have known if you cared about my life instead of the fantasy version you created in your heads. The front door chimed with an alert from the security system. Then again, then a third time. Robert frowned. Are you expecting someone? Through the living room window, I could see 3 black SUVs pulling into the driveway, their headlights cutting through the darkness. Yes, I said calmly. I am. The doorbell rang with the authoritative tone of people accustomed to being answered immediately. Robert moved toward the window, his face pale as he counted the vehicles now parked in our driveway. Who are these people? He whispered. I walked to the front door and opened it before anyone could stop me. Commander Williams stood on the threshold in full dress uniform, flanked by 2 security specialists whose posture suggested they were prepared for any contingency. Admiral Richardson, Williams said, snapping to attention. We are here to provide your escort to the ceremony. Thank you, Commander. Please come in. The 3 men entered our living room with the confident bearing of people who belonged wherever they chose to stand. Williams surveyed the scattered military items with obvious disapproval while the security specialists positioned themselves near the exits. What is the meaning of this? Robert demanded, finding his voice. Williams turned to him with polite curiosity. And you are Robert Richardson. This is my house, and this is my daughter, and I want to know what kind of game you people are playing. No game, sir. We are here to escort one of the Navy's youngest Rear Admirals to her wedding ceremony. Carol laughed nervously. Rear Admiral? You cannot be serious. This is Tammy, our daughter. She has never been in the military. Williams pulled out a tablet and consulted it briefly. Admiral Tammy Richardson, service number 774289116. Graduated Naval Academy class of 2014, currently serving as Deputy Commander Pacific Fleet Special Operations. He looked up at my parents. She just returned from an 18-month classified deployment, which would explain the communication difficulties you may have experienced. 18 months, Jake asked weakly. Yes, sir. The Admiral has been commanding Task Force 77 in the Pacific Theater, humanitarian relief, anti-piracy operations, and classified naval exercises from Hawaii to the South China Sea. The tablet displayed my official service photo, and Williams turned it so my family could see the screen clearly. This is some kind of elaborate prank, Robert said, but his voice lacked conviction. No prank, sir. Would you like me to read the Admiral's commendation record? That would not be necessary, I said quickly. Actually, Carol said faintly, maybe it would help us understand. Williams touched the screen and began reading in his clear command voice. Navy Cross for extraordinary heroism during anti-piracy operations in the Arabian Sea. Silver Star for gallantry during Typhoon Helena rescue operations. Bronze Star with Combat V for valor during the evacuation of American civilians from the Singapore crisis. Purple Heart for wounds received during the bombardment of Task Force 77 flagship USS Princeton. My mother sank onto the couch. You were wounded. Shrapnel wound to the shoulder, I said. It healed fine. Defense Superior Service Medal, Williams continued. Navy Distinguished Service Medal, Legion of Merit with Gold Star, Meritorious Service Medal, Navy Commendation Medal with 4 gold stars, Navy Achievement Medal with 3 gold stars, Combat Action Ribbon, Presidential Unit Citation, Navy Unit Commendation, and Meritorious Unit Commendation. Jake was staring at the ribbons scattered on the coffee table with new understanding. Those are all real. Every one. Williams confirmed. The Admiral also holds the Navy Cross, which is the second highest decoration for valor in the United States military. Second highest, Robert asked. Williams smiled slightly. The Medal of Honor is under consideration for her actions during the typhoon relief operations. 437 lives saved over 72 hours of continuous flight operations in Category 5 storm conditions. The room fell silent except for the ticking of the mantel clock. I still do not understand, Carol said finally. When did this happen? How did we not know? The Admiral's deployment schedule has been classified for operational security reasons, Williams explained. Many military families experience communication blackouts during sensitive operations. But we threw away her mail, my mother whispered. We thought it was junk mail and scam letters. Williams looked confused. You threw away official military correspondence. We did not know, Robert said quickly. We thought someone was trying to scam her. Letters from the Pentagon are usually legitimate, sir. Another SUV pulled into the driveway, and Williams glanced at his watch. Admiral, we should begin preparing for departure. The chapel is expecting us at 1100 hours. Chapel. Naval Academy Chapel, sir. The ceremony has been moved due to security requirements. Carol stood up shakily. Security requirements. When a flag officer marries, especially one with the Admiral's combat record, certain protocols must be observed. The front door opened, and Nathan entered wearing his dress blue uniform. The gold aviator wings above his ribbon rack caught the light as he surveyed the room full of scattered military items and bewildered family members. Sorry, I am late, he said. Had to pick up our rings from the base exchange. He looked at my parents with polite confusion. Are you ready for the wedding? Wedding? Jake asked faintly. Nathan Hayes, he said, extending his hand to my father. Lieutenant Commander, Naval Aviation. You must be the Admiral's parents. Robert stared at Nathan's uniform, taking in the wings, the ribbons, the officer's insignia. You are actually in the Navy. Naval Aviator, sir. Search and rescue operations. That is how I met your daughter, during the typhoon relief mission. She outranked you then? My mother asked. Nathan grinned. She outranks almost everyone. Ma'am, I was just a lieutenant when she pulled my crew out of some very dangerous water, literally. Williams cleared his throat diplomatically. Admiral, perhaps you would like to change into your dress uniform? We have a schedule to maintain. I looked at my parents, who were still processing the revelation that everything they thought they knew about my life was wrong. I need to go upstairs, I said. This will just take a few minutes. As I headed toward the stairs, I heard Williams speaking quietly to my family. The Admiral is highly respected throughout the fleet. You should be very proud of her service record. We had no idea, Carol said, her voice thick with emotion. She has saved countless lives and served her country with distinction. Today should be a celebration of both her military achievements and her personal happiness. I paused on the stairs, listening to my family grapple with a truth they had been too stubborn to see. When I returned 15 minutes later, wearing my dress whites with full ribbons and insignia, the room fell completely silent. The 2 stars on my collar caught the light, and my ribbons formed a precise display of service across my chest. Jake broke the silence with a strangled whisper. Holy hell! Look at her ribbons. Their faces went white as they finally saw me as I truly was. The convoy moved through the streets of Annapolis with practiced efficiency, police escorts clearing the route as we approached the Naval Academy grounds. I sat in the back of the lead vehicle with Nathan, watching my parents' bewildered faces in the trailing SUV through the rear window. How are you feeling? Nathan asked, adjusting his sword belt. Like I am finally telling the truth. About time. I was getting tired of pretending to be a mechanic when they called. The main gate guards snapped to attention as our convoy passed, recognizing the flags mounted on our vehicles. Midshipmen stopped and saluted as we drove through the academy grounds, their crisp uniforms gleaming in the morning sunlight. Admiral, Commander Williams said from the front seat. The chapel staff reports everything is ready. The honor guard is in position, and the guests have been seated according to protocol. How many guests? Approximately 400, ma'am. Word spread quickly through the fleet about your ceremony. Nathan squeezed my hand. 400 people who actually want to celebrate with us. As we approached the chapel, I could see the elaborate preparations that had been arranged overnight. Honor guards from multiple services lined the walkway, their dress uniforms creating a corridor of military precision. The chapel bells were ringing in celebration, their bronze tones echoing across the academy grounds. Our convoy stopped in front of the chapel steps, where a reception committee of senior officers waited in formation. As I stepped out of the vehicle, they came to attention in perfect unison. "Admiral Richardson," said a familiar voice. Admiral Jackson, my mentor and former commanding officer, approached with a warm smile. "Congratulations on this joyous occasion." "Thank you, sir. I did not expect you to be here." "I would not miss it. You have served with distinction, and you deserve every happiness." The second SUV had stopped behind us, and I watched my family emerge with expressions of complete amazement. Robert helped Carol out of the vehicle, both of them staring at the assembled military dignitaries with obvious shock. "This is all for Tammy," my mother whispered. Jake stood beside the vehicle, frantically trying to take selfies with the honor guard, until one of the security specialists gently redirected him. Commander Williams gestured toward the chapel entrance, where the massive doors stood open to reveal hundreds of uniformed personnel rising to their feet. "Admiral, we are ready when you are." I took Nathan's arm and began walking up the stone steps, my heels clicking against the marble in rhythm with the honor guard's ceremonial cadence. Behind us, my family followed in stunned silence, escorted by Admiral Jackson, who was explaining the protocol in quiet, patient tones. "The bride's family will be seated in the front row on the left," he was saying. "As the Admiral's parents, you will be recognized with appropriate honors during the ceremony." "Appropriate honors?" Robert asked weakly. "A flag officer's wedding is a significant naval tradition, sir. The ceremony will reflect the Admiral's rank and service record." As we reached the chapel doors, I paused to look back at my family. Carol was clutching Robert's arm, her eyes wide as she took in the scope of the celebration. Jake had stopped trying to take photos and was simply staring at the sea of uniforms and decorations surrounding us. "Ready?" Nathan asked softly. "Ready." We stepped through the doors into the chapel, and the assembled congregation came to attention with a sound like thunder. 400 military personnel, in full dress uniform, representing every branch of service and ranks from lieutenant to admiral. The morning light streamed through the stained glass windows, casting patterns of blue and gold across the assembled guests. My parents followed us down the center aisle, their faces reflecting their growing understanding of exactly how wrong they had been about my life. Whispered conversations reached us as we passed. "That is Admiral Richardson, youngest female flag officer in the Pacific Fleet, Medal of Honor nominee, saved half the fleet during Typhoon Helena." The wedding processional began as we reached the altar, where the chapel's most distinguished feature awaited us. The officiating minister was not the local priest I had originally planned, but Admiral Marcus Webb, Chief of Naval Operations and the highest-ranking officer in the United States Navy. My mother gasped audibly when she recognized him from television news broadcasts. "Admiral Richardson," he said with formal gravity as we approached. "Lieutenant Commander Hayes, it is my honor to officiate this ceremony." Nathan and I took our positions at the altar while our families were seated in the front rows. I could see my parents whispering urgently to each other, their faces pale with the magnitude of their misunderstanding. "Dearly beloved," Admiral Webb began, his voice carrying easily through the chapel. "We are gathered here today to witness the union of two distinguished naval officers who have served their country with honor and valor." During his opening remarks, he briefly outlined our service records for the benefit of the assembled guests. With each accomplishment he mentioned, I could see my parents sinking lower in their seats. Admiral Richardson's leadership during humanitarian relief operations has saved hundreds of lives and exemplified the finest traditions of naval service. Lieutenant Commander Hayes' courage as a search and rescue pilot has brought countless souls safely home to their families. The ceremony continued with military precision and emotional warmth. When Admiral Webb reached the exchange of vows, Nathan took my hands and spoke with the same quiet strength I had fallen in love with during those dangerous rescue missions. "Tammy, you taught me that real courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to act despite it. You have shown me what it means to serve something greater than yourself, and I promise to support your continued service to our country and our future together." When my turn came, I looked into his eyes and spoke the words I had been rehearsing for months. "Nathan, you risked everything to save strangers, and that is when I knew you were the man I wanted beside me for every mission life would bring. I promise to love you with the same dedication I have given to our flag, and to build a life worthy of the sacrifices we have both made." As we exchanged rings, I glanced at my parents in the front row. My mother was crying, but whether from joy, embarrassment, or regret, I could not tell. My father sat rigid with shock, still processing the reality of what he was witnessing, by the power vested in me by the United States Navy and the state of Maryland. Admiral Webb announced, "I now pronounce you husband and wife. Lieutenant Commander Hayes, you may kiss your admiral." The chapel erupted in applause as Nathan lifted my veil and kissed me with gentle reverence. Around us, 400 military personnel celebrated our union with the enthusiasm of people who understood the sacrifices required to find love in the midst of service. As we turned to face our guests, my parents stood with everyone else, their faces reflecting a mixture of pride and bewildered regret. The recessional began with the traditional Arch of Swords, 36 naval officers drawing their ceremonial blades in perfect synchronization to create a canopy of steel and honor above our heads. Nathan and I walked beneath the gleaming swords while our guests showered us with rose petals and cheers. As we reached the chapel doors, Jake's voice rang out clearly above the celebration. "Holy hell! Look at her ribbons." But this time, his words carried awe instead of mockery. The reception hall at the Naval Academy had been transformed overnight into a celebration worthy of a flag officer's wedding. Round tables draped in navy blue and gold filled the space, each centerpiece featuring miniature ship models and arrangements of white roses. The walls displayed enlarged photographs from my service record, commanding the bridge during storm operations, presenting awards to my crew, shaking hands with foreign dignitaries during diplomatic missions. My parents sat at the head table, still appearing overwhelmed by the magnitude of the celebration surrounding them. Carol kept glancing around the room, counting the stars on various uniforms and whispering calculations to Robert about the combined rank of our wedding guests. "I count at least 12 admirals," she said quietly, "and that table over there is entirely generals." "Joint Chiefs representation," Admiral Jackson explained from his seat beside them. "Your daughter's work often involves inter-service coordination." Nathan and I moved through the receiving line, greeting guests who ranged from Academy classmates to Pentagon officials. Each handshake brought stories I had never shared with my family. Missions we had completed together, lives we had saved, challenges we had overcome. "Admiral Richardson," said Captain Martinez, one of my former squadron commanders, "I still remember that night off the Philippines when you convinced the pirates to surrender without firing a shot. Best negotiation I ever witnessed." "You talked pirates into surrendering?" Jake asked, appearing beside me with a plate of reception food. "It was more cost-effective than a firefight," I explained. "How do you convince pirates to surrender?" Captain Martinez grinned. "She offered them safe passage to international waters and promised not to sink their boat. Sometimes diplomacy works better than weapons." As the afternoon progressed, my family found themselves surrounded by military personnel eager to share stories about my service. Each conversation revealed another layer of my life they had never imagined. Commander Sarah Chen, my former executive officer, approached my parents during the cocktail hour. "Mr. and Mrs. Richardson, I wanted to thank you for raising such an exceptional leader. Your daughter saved my life during the Singapore evacuation." "She did?" Carol asked. "Our helicopter was shot down behind enemy lines. The Admiral led the rescue mission personally, flying through heavy fire to extract our crew. She refused to leave anyone behind." Robert stared at Commander Chen with growing disbelief. "She flew helicopters. She is qualified in 15 different aircraft, sir. One of the most skilled pilots in the fleet." As the evening continued, Admiral Webb called for attention and approached the microphone set up near the head table. "Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests," he began. "It is my pleasure to make a special announcement during this joyous celebration." The room fell silent, and Nathan squeezed my hand under the table. Effective immediately, Admiral Tammy Richardson is hereby promoted to the rank of Vice Admiral, making her the youngest 3-star admiral in the history of the United States Navy. The room exploded in applause as Admiral Webb gestured for me to join him at the microphone. I stood on unsteady legs, my mind reeling from the unexpected announcement. This promotion recognizes not only Admiral Richardson's outstanding combat leadership, but also her innovative approaches to humanitarian operations and international cooperation, he continued. The Senate confirmed this promotion unanimously yesterday evening. I reached the microphone in a daze, accepting congratulations from the assembled guests while my family sat in shocked silence. "Thank you, sir. I managed. This honor belongs to every sailor, Marine, and airmen who served under my command. As the applause died down, Admiral Webb pulled out another document. I also have the privilege of reading Admiral Richardson's latest commendation, which arrived this morning from the White House. He unfolded the official paper and began reading in his clear command voice. For extraordinary heroism during Typhoon Helena relief operations, Vice Admiral Tammy Richardson distinguished herself by leading continuous rescue operations for 72 hours without rest, personally piloting 17 helicopter missions into Category 5 storm conditions. Her actions resulted in the successful evacuation of 437 civilian and military personnel from compromised vessels, with 0 casualties among rescue personnel. The room remained silent as he continued. During the final rescue mission, Admiral Richardson's aircraft was struck by lightning and suffered complete electrical failure while carrying 8 wounded civilians. Using manual flight controls and dead reckoning navigation, she successfully landed her damaged aircraft on the deck of the hospital ship USS Mercy in 0 visibility conditions. My mother had gone completely pale. The President of the United States wishes to extend his personal congratulations to Admiral and Mrs. Hayes on their wedding day, and looks forward to honoring Admiral Richardson's service at a White House ceremony next month. Nathan leaned over and whispered, "Did you know about the White House ceremony?" I shook my head. "First, I have heard of it." As I returned to my seat, Jake appeared beside me with wide eyes. "The President wants to give you an award, apparently. And you never mentioned this because until this week, you all thought I was unemployed and dating a mechanic." During dinner, my parents barely touched their food as a steady stream of military dignitaries approached our table to offer congratulations and share memories. Each story painted a picture of service and sacrifice that contradicted everything they thought they knew about my life. "I still do not understand," my father said finally. "When did all of this happen? How did we miss 18 years of military service?" "You did not miss it," I replied quietly. "You chose not to see it." "What do you mean?" "I mean, I tried to tell you about the academy. You said military service was for people who could not get real jobs. I tried to share my commissioning ceremony. You said you were busy with inventory at the store. I tried to invite you to my promotion ceremonies. You said you did not want to waste vacation time on my hobbies." Carol set down her fork with shaking hands. "We did not know they were real. You did not know because you never asked. For 18 years, you assumed I was failing at life because my success did not look like what you expected." The reception continued around us while my family struggled to process the reality of who I had become despite their expectations. As the evening wound down, Nathan and I prepared to leave for our delayed honeymoon, which would now have to be postponed until after the Pentagon debriefings and White House ceremony. Admiral Jackson approached our table one final time, carrying a small wrapped package, a wedding gift from the Joint Chiefs. He said, presenting it to Nathan and me, "Something to remember this day." Inside was a crystal ship model mounted on a wooden base, engraved with our names, wedding date, and a simple inscription: "For distinguished service above and beyond the call of duty, and for finding love in the storm." My mother read the inscription aloud, her voice barely above a whisper. "Above and beyond the call of duty," she repeated. "That is what they think of you. That is what I have earned," I said gently, "just like Nathan earned his decorations. Just like every person in this room earned their rank through service and sacrifice. And we almost destroyed your wedding day because we thought you were making a mistake. You thought you were protecting me. I understand that now." As the evening ended and our guests began departing, my family lingered at our table while the cleanup crews worked around us. "Can you forgive us?" my father asked finally. "There is nothing to forgive," I replied. "But there is a lot to rebuild." The reception hall had mostly cleared, leaving only our immediate family and a few close military friends finishing conversations near the gift table. Nathan was speaking with his squadron mates while I approached my parents, who sat at our table looking emotionally drained. "Walk with me," I said quietly. They followed me out onto the academy grounds, where the evening air carried the sound of chapel bells and distant military calls. We found a bench overlooking the Severn River, where countless naval officers had contemplated their futures over more than a century. "I need you to understand something," I began. "I knew you were intercepting my mail." Robert looked startled. "You knew?" "Military intelligence tracks all communications involving flag officers. When my Pentagon correspondence started disappearing, They investigated immediately. How long have you known? Carol asked. About 6 months. I had agents monitoring your mail handling to determine if it was a security breach or family interference. The weight of this revelation settled between us like a physical presence. We have been under surveillance, my father asked weakly. No, your mail handling has been under surveillance. There is a difference. I pulled out my secure tablet and showed them a video file labeled Richardson Family Communications Analysis. This is footage of you throwing away a presidential invitation to the state dinner last month, I said, starting the video. And this is you discarding my Navy Cross ceremony invitation. And this is you shredding a personal letter from the Secretary of Defense. They watched themselves destroying official correspondence with growing horror. We did not know, Carol whispered. The investigation report concluded that you were acting out of ignorance rather than malice, so no charges were filed. Charges? Robert asked. Interfering with official military communications is a federal crime. So is destroying presidential correspondence. I scrolled to another section of the report, but the investigation uncovered something else interesting. Financial records showing anonymous deposits into your checking account over the past 5 years, payments for your mortgage, medical bills, and emergency repairs. My parents exchanged confused glances. The lottery windfall that saved your house 2 years ago. I continued. That was not the lottery. That was my admiral's salary, transferred through a blind trust to keep you from losing your home. You have been supporting us, my mother asked. Did you really think a $20,000 lottery ticket would generate monthly payments for 2 years? I have been covering your expenses since my promotion to flag rank because I could not stand the thought of you losing everything while I was deployed. Carol began crying silently, tears streaming down her face as the full scope of their misunderstanding became clear. The medical specialist who treated Dad's heart condition last year, I continued. The one who supposedly worked with your insurance company to reduce the bills? That was a Navy cardiologist I arranged to consult on your case. The Navy paid for my surgery. I paid for your surgery through military medical channels that ensured you received the best possible care. Robert slumped forward, his head in his hands. We have been taking money from you while treating you like a failure. You have been taken care of by someone who loves you despite your inability to see her clearly. I showed them another video file, this one from my medal ceremonies and promotion events. These are the events you missed because you thought they were fake. This is me receiving the Silver Star after the Arabian Sea operations. This is my promotion to flag rank. This is the ceremony where I was given command of Task Force 77. They watched in silence as years of achievements they had dismissed as fantasies played out on the screen. In every single ceremony, there is an empty chair reserved for family, I said. Every time, I hoped you might surprise me and show up. Every time, I made excuses for why you were not there. We thought you were lying to us, Carol said through her tears. I was protecting you. Do you have any idea what kind of security clearance investigation you would face if you knew the details of my assignments? It was easier to let you think I was unsuccessful than to subject you to federal background checks and polygraph examinations. Nathan appeared at the edge of our conversation, his dress uniform jacket draped over his arm. Everything okay over here? Just having an overdue conversation, I said. He approached and sat beside me on the bench, his presence providing comfortable support. Your parents know about the Pentagon briefing next week. What Pentagon briefing? Robert asked. My new assignment, I explained. I am taking command of Naval Special Operations. What does that mean? Jake asked, having wandered over to join us. Nathan answered for me. It means she will be in charge of Navy SEALs, special boat teams, and classified maritime operations worldwide. That sounds dangerous, Carol said. Everything I have done for the past 18 years has been dangerous, I replied. The difference is now you know about it. My father looked at me with something approaching awe. How did we get everything so wrong? You got it wrong because you decided what my life should look like instead of asking what my life actually looked like. You got it wrong because you confused your expectations with reality. Can we fix this? He asked. That depends on whether you are willing to accept who I am instead of who you wanted me to be. A comfortable silence settled over us as we watched the sunset reflect off the river. Military personnel moved across the grounds with purposeful efficiency, preparing for evening formations and ceremonies that had marked time at the academy for generations. I want to try, Carol said finally. I want to learn about your real life. It will not be easy. My work requires security clearances and background investigations. You will be questioned about people you know, places you have been, debts you owe. Your phones and computers will be monitored. Your social media will be restricted. We can handle that, Robert said. Can you handle having a daughter whose life you cannot fully understand or discuss with others? Can you handle knowing I might be in danger and not being able to talk about it? They exchanged glances, weighing the implications of a relationship built on trust rather than control. We want to try, my mother said. We want to know our daughter. Then we start tomorrow. With honesty, boundaries, and respect for each other's choices. Nathan stood and offered me his hand. Ready to go home, Admiral. Ready. As we prepared to leave, Jake approached me hesitantly. Tammy? I am sorry about everything. About the wedding dress, about not believing in you, about being a terrible brother. You were not terrible, Jake. You were following their lead because it was easier than thinking for yourself. Can I ask you something? Anything. What you do. Does it matter? Like, really matter? I considered his question carefully. Last year, my task force evacuated 350 American citizens from a war zone in the Mediterranean. We brought them home safely to families who thought they would never see them again. Does that matter? Yeah, he said quietly. That matters. Then yes, what I do matters. As we walked back toward the waiting convoy, my parents fell into step beside us. What happens now? Carol asked. Now you learn who I really am, I said. And I learn whether we can build something real together. The evening had brought more than a wedding celebration. It had brought the possibility of genuine family relationships built on truth instead of assumptions. For the first time in 18 years, that felt like enough. 2 weeks later, I stood in my parents' living room again, but everything had changed. The scattered military items had been carefully cleaned and properly displayed in a place of honor above the fireplace. My Medal of Honor citation hung in the frame that had once held my destroyed wedding dress photo, and my ribbons were arranged with military precision in a custom case my father had built himself. The Navy Wives Group wants to know if you would speak at their next meeting, my mother said, pouring coffee into mugs that bore the seal of Naval Special Operations Command. They are very interested in hearing about your experiences. I will consider it, depending on my clearance level for that week. My father looked up from the newspaper, where a front-page article detailed my appointment to lead Naval Special Operations. It says here you will be responsible for counter-terrorism operations worldwide. I cannot discuss the details, but yes, the scope is international. Are you worried about the danger? It was the first time he had ever asked me about my feelings regarding my work, and I took a moment to answer thoughtfully. I am more worried about doing the job well than about the risks involved. When you are responsible for other people's safety, your own fears become secondary. Jake emerged from the basement wearing a Navy t-shirt he had purchased at the Academy gift shop during our wedding reception. He had been researching military careers online and asking detailed questions about service requirements. I have been thinking about what you said about work that matters, he said. The recruiter says I could qualify for naval intelligence. That would require significant lifestyle changes, I warned. Physical fitness standards, educational requirements, security clearances. I know, but I am tired of having no real purpose. Carol beamed at her son. He has been working out every morning and studying for the aptitude tests. The transformation in my family had been remarkable to witness. Freed from the burden of maintaining their false assumptions about my life, they had thrown themselves into understanding military service with the enthusiasm of people discovering a new world. There is something else we need to discuss, Robert said, setting down his coffee mug. The money you have been sending us. What about it? We want to pay it back. That is not necessary. It is necessary for us, Carol said firmly. We cannot accept financial support from someone we treated so poorly. We have spoken with a financial counselor about restructuring our debts and managing our expenses properly. The house payments alone will take you 15 years to repay. Then it will take 15 years. We need to earn back the right to be proud of ourselves. I looked at my parents with new respect. The couple sitting before me bore little resemblance to the people who had destroyed my wedding dress 2 weeks earlier. Accepting reality had been painful for them, but it had also been liberating. There is one condition, I said. Any money you repay goes into a college fund for Jake's children, whenever he has them. Deal, Robert said immediately. My secure phone buzzed with a priority message. I glanced at it and saw notification of a video call from the White House Communications Office. Excuse me for a moment, I said, moving into the kitchen for privacy. The call connected to reveal a familiar face on the screen. The President of the United States, sitting in what appeared to be the Oval Office. Admiral Hayes, he said with a warm smile. Congratulations on your wedding and your new command assignment. Thank you, Mr. President. I wanted to personally congratulate you before the public ceremony next week. Your service during the Pacific operations has been exemplary, and the Medal of Honor is a fitting recognition of your courage. I am honored, sir. I also understand your family was unaware of your military service until recently. Yes, sir. For security reasons, I had maintained operational cover regarding my assignments. Well, I hope they appreciate what an exceptional daughter they have. The entire nation owes you a debt of gratitude. Thank you, Mr. President. I am grateful for the opportunity to serve. After ending the call, I returned to the living room where my family was discussing Jake's potential military career with the seriousness of people who finally understood what such service entailed. Who was that? My mother asked. The President. Confirming details for next week's ceremony. You are on a first-name basis with the President of the United States, Jake said wonderingly. I am on a professional basis with the President of the United States, I corrected. There is a difference. Nathan arrived as we were finishing lunch, still wearing his flight suit from morning training exercises. He kissed me hello and accepted a cup of coffee from Carol, who had developed a genuine affection for her new son-in-law. How was the mission planning session? I asked. Classified, he said with a grin, but productive. Will you be able to attend the White House ceremony? Assuming no operational emergencies? Yes. The squadron is excited to have representation at a presidential medal ceremony. Over the following hour, we discussed practical matters, Nathan's upcoming deployment schedule, my command responsibilities, and the reality that military marriages required constant adaptation to changing circumstances. Is it difficult being married to someone whose work you cannot fully discuss? Carol asked Nathan. It is challenging sometimes, he admitted, but what we do have in common is a commitment to something larger than ourselves. That shared purpose makes the sacrifices worthwhile. And you both understand the demands of military life, Robert added. That is crucial. I agreed. We both know that duty comes first, even when it is inconvenient or dangerous. As the afternoon progressed, extended family members began arriving for an impromptu celebration. Cousins I had not seen in years, aunts and uncles who had received official wedding invitations but been told by my parents that the ceremony was canceled, and my grandmother, who had driven from Cleveland the moment she learned the truth. Tammy Richardson, my grandmother said, embracing me with fierce pride. I always knew you were destined for greatness. Your parents just needed time to catch up. You knew about my service. Child, I have been following your career in the Naval Institute newsletter for years. I have a scrapbook full of your accomplishments that I show to anyone who will sit still long enough. She produced a well-worn photo album containing newspaper clippings, magazine articles, and official photographs spanning my entire military career. Every promotion ceremony, every award citation, every mission report that made it into the public record, she said proudly. I even have the article about your Typhoon rescue operations from the Naval Academy Alumni magazine. My parents looked at the scrapbook with amazement, seeing their daughter's documented achievements laid out in chronological order. Why did you never mention this to us? Carol asked her mother-in-law. Because you made it clear you thought she was a failure, and I was not going to argue with people too stubborn to see the truth. The family celebration continued into the evening, with stories shared and relationships rebuilt on foundations of honesty rather than assumption. My cousins asked detailed questions about naval operations, my aunts marveled at the scope of my responsibilities, and my uncles compared my achievements to their own military service from decades past. As the evening wound down and extended family prepared to leave, my grandmother pulled me aside for a private conversation. Your parents have learned an important lesson, she said. Sometimes the people we love the most are the hardest for us to see clearly. Do you think they really understand now? I think they understand that they missed 18 years of your real life because they were too busy being disappointed in the life they imagined you were living. Will it be different now? That depends on whether they can learn to love who you are instead of who they wanted you to be. As the house emptied and Nathan prepared to drive me back to the base, my parents walked us to the door. "Tammy," my father said quietly, "I want you to know that we are proud of you, not just because of your rank or your medals, but because you became someone worthy of respect despite our failure to support you. We love you," my mother added. "The real you, not the version we tried to create in our heads." "I love you too," I replied. "All of you. But love is not enough by itself. We have to build trust and respect over time." "We understand," Robert said, "and we are committed to doing better." As Nathan and I drove through the quiet streets toward the naval base, I reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought us to this point. A wedding that began with destroyed dreams had ended with family relationships rebuilt on truth and mutual respect. "How do you feel about everything?" Nathan asked as we approached the base gates. "Hopeful," I said. "For the first time in 18 years, my family knows who I really am. That gives us a chance to build something genuine together. And if they cannot handle the reality of your work, then at least we will know where we stand. Honesty is always better than comfortable lies." The guard at the main gate snapped to attention as our car approached, recognizing the vehicle flags that identified us as senior officers. As we drove through the base toward our quarters, I thought about the lesson my family had learned through their painful confrontation with truth. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is the opportunity to see you clearly, even when that revelation challenges everything they thought they knew. Sometimes love means accepting that you were wrong about someone rather than demanding they conform to your misconceptions. My parents had spent 18 years trying to control my choices because they feared I would fail. Instead, they had nearly missed the chance to celebrate my success. The wedding dress they destroyed had been replaced by something far more valuable, a relationship built on truth rather than fantasy. As we settled into our home on base, surrounded by the quiet efficiency of military life, I felt a peace I had not experienced since childhood. My family finally knew who I was. My husband understood the demands of our shared service, and tomorrow would bring new challenges worthy of our combined strength. The story that began with betrayal had ended with redemption. Justice had been served not through revenge, but through the simple power of truth revealed at the right moment. Have you ever had to choose between keeping peace in your family and being true to yourself? What would you do if the people closest to you could not see your real accomplishments because they were too focused on their own expectations? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like this video, subscribe for more inspiring stories of personal triumph, and share it with someone who might need to hear that their worth is not determined by other people's limitations. Thank you for joining me today. And remember that sometimes the most courageous thing you can do is simply allow people to see who you really are.